Hello and welcome to the Smooth Scaling podcast, where we speak with industry experts to uncover how to design, build, and run scalable and resilient systems. I'm your host, José Quaresma, and today we had the pleasure of talking to Iris Dyrmishi, Senior Observability Engineer at Miro. We went all in observability and tracing, focusing on how to use it both in a reactive way and a proactive way. We also discussed her experience treating the observability platform as a product and aligning it with the needs of the engineering teams. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It really helps the podcast. Enjoy! Hi Iris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I would like to start straight in and would like to ask you about your role and your team at Miro. You're working in the observability team. Can you tell us what does the team do?
Yeah, absolutely. So technically, I'm an SRE and focusing on the observability part. So an observability engineer, and we're a team of around 8 people now. So what we do day to day is basically we have built the observability platform. We're constantly maintaining it, improving it, modernizing it, making sure that it is up to date with everything that is happening in the community as well. And on top of that, we're also doing advocacy for observability, making sure we're creating processes, guidelines for the teams to follow. So it's not only technical, but it's also a little bit of advocating and a little bit of product selling to our customers, which are our engineers. So it's a little bit of everything. It goes beyond the technical.
That actually aligns quite well with some of my previous experience, that because you build something that is awesome and really works doesn't necessarily mean that people will start using it, right? So even internally within Miro, then I guess you would have to do some internal selling to get people to use your platform and the services that you're doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because observability is such an important topic for the day-to-day work of all engineers, and we cannot just expect someone to know what observability is and what everything that we offer is. So we have to make sure that it is properly documented, properly explained to everyone, also showing what benefits could bring to the team. So it gets adopted. Some things, get collected by default, so the teams don't need to do much, but correlation, setting up the proper alerting, these things need to be said. We have so many engineers in my company currently in Miro, and in my previous experiences as well. You cannot expect everyone to know everything. They have their own roadmaps, their own work to take care of. So it's our job to teach them and to instruct them how to use our tools.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you see that the engineering teams are your customers, right? So how does that impact how you build the platform?
So they have a very important role on what we're bringing to the table. So, of course, yes, the whole team, we've been working in observability for a long time. So we're experts in our field. We know what needs to be done and what needs to be brought to the table. But most of us have never been backend engineers, front-end engineers. We don't know their specific needs. We don't know what the teams actually need or what will help them make everything clear for them. So we have this cycle of constantly requesting features from them. We have a very open conversation and an open culture, so they can come to us every time with features. And everything that we release something new, we go back on a feedback loop, so they can provide us with feedback, how it was received, how it is being used, whether it was worth to continue it or not. So instead of just having like a purely technical roadmap of things that we think are going to be best, we usually go and ask them what they need, how can we help them, and interact that with our own roadmap.
I understand that you were also quite involved in a migration from Prometheus to OpenTelemetry. Can you tell us? Can you walk us through that migration?
We actually, we still have not migrated fully from Prometheus to OpenTelemetry. It's tracing actually that I was leading. So it was from Jaeger, Zipkin to OpenTelemetry. If that's what you're doing, we can definitely talk about it. Yeah. So something good with OpenTelemetry, and I've been very vocal about this, I like to share my experience as an end user, is that OpenTelemetry is backwards compatible with almost everything. So for example, in the casing of tracing, we had several types of spans that we were receiving every day. Some Zipkin, some Jaeger, I don't know, several. And the point was that we could not continue with the previous architecture because we were constantly dropping spans. It was not able to accept all of it. And then there was a matter of correlation because some applications were sending things differently, some differently. It was a mess in general. So what we want to do is go to a tool that could like unify them all, like the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. That we chose OpenTelemetry. And the good things about this was that it was backwards compatible with everything. We were running 2 stacks in parallel, the previous one, so the teams would not notice that something was changed, and OpenTelemetry, and sending the data to both of them for a period of time of adjustment.
Nice.
And in the end, we were getting so much more data. The data was better because there are so many transformations that you can do in OpenTelemetry that we could safely remove Jaeger. And the teams did not notice a difference in terms of their experience getting worse. It was better because they were getting more information faster. And of course, afterwards, there was a different part, which is the instrumentation, because you can keep everything a mess and migrate it, but eventually you will have to standardize. So after we migrated the infrastructure and the tooling and everything was, in a better shape, we started advocating with teams to use OpenTelemetry instrumentation. And today we've reached in a very good place. And tracing is actually being used to fix issues, to find performance bottlenecks. We moved from just using logging and metrics to adding tracing there as well. So it's a great achievement.
And was there any other learnings from that migration, or some things that maybe were unexpected?
So the learning, at least for me, I started this migration very early when I joined Miro. And for me, I was always the technical person. Okay, this can be done like that. Architecture, we have the designs, let's do it. So the biggest learning was how important it is to know the people that we are having these features from. And that's where this mindset of product actually came for the whole team. So we were making this big migration, but we had to, justify something. You're like, okay, this is the coolest thing in the industry right now. OpenTelemetry, let's do it. We have a need for it, but you also have to justify why you can use another tool. Why do you need this many engineering hours to do it? How it is going to benefit the end user. So that's something that I learned from this whole migration thing, that you don't need to think only how to do it and how to build those architecture diagrams, which are pretty cool, but you also have to think of the stakeholders that are going to be your upper management to show a good case, especially for a big change like this, and to think of your end users, what you're offering to them, how it can improve, and how you can follow up with them to actually even improve it more, their experience. It will not stop there.
Yeah. And it's... I think that's a very, very good learning. It reminds me of, I think, sometimes with engineering, sometimes we go after a new technology or a change because it's a great technology, and so then you kind of, okay, I want this technology, now I just need to find a use case for it, right? And I think it's maybe not always the best approach, and maybe it's more useful to think about what are the kind of the things that we need to help with and solve, right?
Yeah, we see this a lot. If you're speaking to other observability engineers, you see a lot of use cases like this, that they want to have this new tool and to implement it, but they cannot get the proper support for it. So, and they're always asking other engineers who have managed to get it, like, how did you do it? And usually, as you said, you find the use case, you show the value that it is providing, and everything. I mean, it's not as simple as that, but of course, once you show value, people's opinions are going to change, even if they were completely against it. Be like, okay, there is something here. Maybe we should pursue it. So that's how you start.
And you being in the observability world, what do you see that is holding companies from increasing their maturity in the area?
I think companies are not investing enough in observability. I feel like they don't see observability as a first class citizen, but just something that happens, like, okay, we have everything ready, now let's implement observability. But that's not the right mindset, because observability needs to be part of all the processes before you're actually building your product. It's not too late, of course, after everything is done, but you're not going to get the best results. I see it happen a lot. And for some companies, it could work, but instead of investing on a few individuals that could be just SREs, but with no observability experience, which can be gained throughout time, instead of investing in that, they choose to buy like some vendor, some tool, add an agent, and gets all the data out there. And in the beginning, it works great, because it's small and you don't have to put any work. But as it grows, it gets messier. And it's very difficult to reach a maturity level of good observability once everything is all over the place.
Yeah. And so if there's anyone out there listening that they are trying to push for more observability in their company, right? What I heard before is like focus on the business case, right? So do you have any kind of thoughts on where should they start looking for that business case?
So there could be two ways that you could do that. The first one is to find some observability champions in the teams, in the engineering teams. That's where you look at. You see them and you're like, okay, who likes observability? So you approach them and you get some use cases of how good observability is going to make their life easier, to build their product faster, to make everything more reliable. So that's an excellent place to start to set the roots of investing more in observability. And the second one would be focused on the incidents. So after all the companies are out there to make money. And if an incident is happening, most companies are losing money, especially, for example, if it's a retailer that, for example, every 10 minutes, it's gaining millions of euros from people buying. So focus on those incidents, get the data, see how the lack of observability made the whole thing last longer, and how good observability would have made it shorter and actually the losses even less. These are two things that I would advise, but of course it depends on the industry that you are situated to.
I think that's sounds like a very good starting point. Thank you. And you mentioned the incident part, so a bit the reactive incident response and how observability can help with that. But I understand that that in Miro you have kind of gone from that to more of a using observability for a proactive performance improvement.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm proud to say that in Miro we have a pretty good maturity when it comes to observability. It's not perfect, of course, but of course we have the reactive part, alerting dashboard. So if something happens, our engineers know where to go and what data to get. But observability has become part of the day-to-day work. Every day we're seeing more teams that are wanting to invest more, and we see PRs, for example, and that makes me very happy as a tracing person, that some team that are struggling with an issue, with a performance issue for a very long time, they open a PR and they say that thanks to this spans and to tracing in general, we managed to find the bottleneck. And it happens, it is happening a lot. So we have understood that because we have this great observability, the three pillars in a good shape, and actually the teams are getting more interested and they feel more involved on the observability world. They're actually using it not just to react and to fix an issue, but to proactively find bottlenecks and what issues there could be to fix before something breaks. It's a great thing to see, and I highly recommend everyone to try to go to that direction.
And you mentioned the three pillars. Can you just tell us about them?
So it's the three classical pillars. It's metrics, logs, and tracing. So before we were relying a lot on metrics and logs, the classics, and logs were the ones that you see everything that is happening. And now that we have tracing, it's an extra layer, and because of the whole OpenTelemetry thing and making things more standard, our engineers are able to correlate between logs and traces, so that makes their whole life easier. And of course, there are more pillars, for example, profiling, which we're not there yet, but at least in those three, we're pretty mature.
I don't want to assume that everyone listening kind of is deep in, kind of has deep knowledge in this area. And also, I would say also for myself, can you just give an example of, maybe it could be a simple slice of a platform or application, but how would it look like if you only have logs and if you actually have it relying kind of have tracing correctly set up for it. How does that look like as an engineer, kind of going through and trying to understand how it is working?
Yeah. So let's imagine that, for example, you have only logging available. So you go to the platform and there is a bunch of 10,000 log events, error, and they all say the same thing. Yes, this application is throwing an error, but why? So it's very difficult to pinpoint where it is. Meanwhile, if you are using tracing, for somebody that doesn't know what tracing is, what it happens is that it records every step of the way from the beginning of the call until the end. So if you go to tracing, you will see your whole call from the beginning until the end. You will see that in some parts, it's higher latency. Be like, oh, maybe the issue is going to be here. Even better, if there was actually an error towards the way, you will see that an error was thrown at this particular part of the whole journey. So that point you directly to where the issue is, instead of you having to assume, okay, error, but where could it be? When you have it all there and it's telling you exactly, this is your error, this is what you need to fix.
I think in my experience is that if you only have logs, and if you're investigating an issue, right, it kind of feels like you still need to get to the tracing, whether you have to do it yourself while looking at the logs. So you have, I don't know, implicit tracing, and we're like, okay, I think I know the application. So first was this call, and then I can see that there was this one, so that's this log, and then this one, and that's probably how we got here, right? But what we're then discussing is that you can have that all instrumented and set up in a way that you get that tracing. I don't want to say automatically. Well, I guess it is, but it's just if you do things right, you'll be able to see it straight away, right?
Instead of taking you 2 hours to try to trace everything back, because you will find it eventually, especially if you're experienced and you've been working with a product and you're working with a team, you'll find it eventually, but it could take you 2 hours or 2 seconds. So yeah, of course, 2 seconds is preferable.
So that, getting back to the business case, if it's an incident that is bringing some of your production system down, then 2 hours or 2 seconds, or even 2 minutes or 2 seconds, that is a big difference. And are you then seeing also it? I would imagine. I think you touched on it a little bit on the PRs and seeing engineers using tracing to improve performance. Are you seeing that then applied on the performance testing part, so that there's kind of I guess it would also help incredibly that once you're kind of evaluating the performance of your application, that you can find the bottlenecks much easier when you're making changes and developing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen it in so many use cases. I mentioned just the PRs because it's the one that came to my mind first, and it made me very proud when I see it. But it's being used for all kinds of use cases. It just makes your life generally easier.
Can you share with us how with observability in general, and maybe still with traceability, how do you see that? I mean, do you think that gives the teams freedom, or does it enable them to push further? Or I guess it would at least give them some confidence to do so, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why I like it when I see the teams are trying to pursue a better observability. It gives them a lot of freedom. In Miro, but I've noticed that it's the standard in the community, is that the teams are actually the owners of their telemetry data, of their dashboards, of their alerting. So they have the freedom to do everything that they want. And we are not the ones that are building a dashboard for them or building an alert. And when it is firing, we go and investigate it. No, that is all the team. So it gives them the freedom, to learn about their applications better, to protect their applications better, because who wants their product, their baby, let's say, to have an issue that could cause an outage. But also pushes them, because they know they're getting to know their data so well, it pushes them to actually improve as well. Not just protect it, but improve it and constantly making it part of their decision making. And actually, I wanted to mention here, since it's part of the conversation as well, now with the LLMs and the MCP servers, it's getting easier and easier to make observability as part of your decision makings when creating a PR or when you're making a change. So, for example, you want to change something in your application, you can see the observability implications because you already have some data and what it could mean. is it a good idea or not? So yeah, it generally gives them a lot of freedom and helps them improve a lot their
Yeah.
product without needing, to consult someone every time that an issue is happening or every time they want to improve.
And do you see any other impacts from AI in this field? I mean, it could be positive ones or negative ones. There's probably a bit of both. I guess that's as many things in life. But what have you seen in practice changing?
I choose to see the positive sides. I'm a big fan
Mm-hmm.
of AI, and in
Mm-hmm.
our company we are using AI a lot. We're actually pushed to use it as a tool to help us. So I've seen it as a very positive thing. So for us as engineers, of course, it helps on our day to day work. It's not, let's say, as practical as it is for a backend engineer or front end engineer, because mostly us is infrastructure, so it requires a lot of knowledge that the LLMs are still not there. But when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the perspective of an engineer, it helps them a lot. And I was actually in the shoes of one yesterday because I wanted to troubleshoot some changes that I made,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea where to start about the changes in the engineering side, and I didn't want to reach out to someone for an experiment. So using LLM, I actually managed to find all the data I needed without knowing where the
Mm.
application is. So I feel like it's so positive that even someone that just joins the company or hasn't had interest in knowing how observability works for their team can start getting an idea how everything works, what their necessary data is, and how to improve without spending hours and hours. It's very positive in general. Negative, I mean, I guess the costs. It is expensive, and if you're relying
Mm.
only on the agents, LLMs to
Yeah.
get your observability knowledge, it could get very expensive for the company and for you. But other than that, I find very positive things about AI.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. And you've also, before joining Miro, you worked at Farfetch as well, right? So is it? Would love to hear your thoughts on kind of from an observability perspective. Is it pretty much the same kind of when thinking of observability, or are there things that being in two different areas are there big differences there?
That's interesting thing for me. When I moved from one company to the other, the
Mm.
transition was so easy because it was the same.
Mm.
I would say it's a bit easier on the Farfetch side, maybe, because, well, not easier. It's just that the way that the product works, for example, it's a website that you're buying, so it is easier
Mm.
to collect all the data that you need. And in Miro, because
Mm.
it's a collaboration platform with so
Yeah.
many users at the same time, can get a bit more complicated. But in terms of tooling and observability culture and what you need to do to bring it to the engineers and to improve their lives, it was the same. So it was a very easy transition.
And of course, I mean, we are big fans of talking about scalability, right? Is there how do you see from an observability perspective? I guess you maybe touched a little bit on it from being able to more easily find the bottlenecks, and that in one way will then help being more scalable, right? Is there any other ways that you've seen the observability and scalability playing together?
Yeah, well, the first thing is, this to have a system scalable, you need to have the metrics for it. So that's the first part. The observability is very important for it. But to actually make the architecture decisions about scalability, not in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
HPA, VPA, KEDA, aside of that, which is the first part. Yeah, I've seen it a lot. People are actually building their architectures with observability in mind, knowing that the data that they have to make their applications more scalable in general. So they're using all this knowledge that they have and injecting it into their architectures and how they're actually building their applications. So I've seen that a lot. And of course, it makes me very happy. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of observability and making it the center of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very positive signs when I see the teams that are actually taking all this data into consideration before they're building.
Are there any? I know it's maybe a hard question, but do you see any downsides to observability? I mean, is there anything that you can think of that would be like, oh, I don't know, we shouldn't be using observability here? Or I mean, is there anything that comes to mind?
I wouldn't say that's the case. There are negative sides, but not in that we shouldn't be using it here. It should be used everywhere because you need to have a visibility of what you're doing, not just build blindly. And especially if you're working for, a production product, you cannot just let it work and not know what is happening with it. The negative sides of observability, I would say, is that it sometimes can be a bit of a burden to teams. For example, it's funny because I'm going to talk about this in Observability Day that's happening soon in Amsterdam together with my co-speaker. But it can be a burden because, for example, you have observability, so much data, so much freedom. You create like 100 alerts. And while you're working, you have alerts firing left, right, false positives, and you don't know. It becomes a noise. Instead of helping you, it actually stops you from doing your job. You want to see what is happening. There is like 10,000 dashboards in your team's name. Some of them created 5 years ago by somebody that is not even in the company anymore. So that's what the negative sides of observability, I would say, because you also have to follow some processes and to keep everything clean, which happens with our help, of course, with the observability team. But yeah, sometimes it can be very noise and you're like, okay, I don't need this. This is not important until an incident happens and you understand that actually it was important, but because there was so much noise before, it's like, the crying wolf expression. So yeah, I would say that's the only thing that is negative, but it's something that can be fixed and improved, of course.
And I would also think that maybe cost would come into perspective. So are you then often in discussions or of, oh, we should add this data point, but should we, because it will be we will come with a high cost? I would think that that's also often a discussion.
Yeah, observability cost it's a big problem. I think the issue with this is that, first of all, observability cost is not really the cost of the observability team, but it's a cost that is shared between the many teams. And that's a common problem. I see that it's not really charged back. Well, it's not really a problem, but for example, when they're seeing those sheets with all the processes, like, oh my God, observability is killing us with the costs, but it's not me that's killing you with the cost, It's something in general. But the conversations that I have about cost is that generally first is reliability and cost is second. So if we see that something is important and needs to be observed, which is everything in my opinion, it will always get it, even if it's getting the cost. The best that we can do is optimize this cost. And there are tools to do that, processes to do that. But reliability and good visibility comes first before cost, always.
And I guess it then tied back to the business case as well, right? And maybe adding these components would increase the cost, but it would also help us have a more performant application, help when there's incidents getting faster to the root cause, etc. So that's back to our business case.
Absolutely, yeah. As I said, it's like the center of the universe, the tech universe. People need to listen to me more and understand that.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess there's maybe the business case there as well, that you could potentially also use it to guide your architectural decisions, your system, and potentially have reduced infrastructure costs, some other areas, because you had the observability and were able to
exactly
to get, I guess, the overall infrastructure more tailored to your needs, right?
Exactly. And I could give you an example right now, and it's also something that we're going to be talking at KubeCon in another talk, that we were using eBPF observability recently, which is not used a lot by many companies, but it's it's hot right now in the market. So we decided to use this Grafana Beyla, which is donated to OpenTelemetry. It's fully open source. And we were able to see the networking costs of observability. And it's very high, because usually you do not consider networking from cloud services. And we noticed that it was very high, and it helped us make some reduction that completely changed our bill in observability networking. And also it is helping other teams, because they know now that hey, this is so expensive. Could it be optimized? They're also having their own initiatives to improve it. So yeah, it can be really used for good use cases like this.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. I think we're getting closer to the end. I think we always like to wrap up with a few kind of rapid fire questions. I think we'll usually have 3, and we'll do that today as well. So we would start maybe saying, what advice would you give to someone that is maybe kind of either starting in this career or trying to push their company to be more mature within observability?
Get involved in the observability community, because the amount of learning possible there, it's amazing. And you get to see so many professionals sharing their use cases. You get to learn about the tooling, and you can bring amazing knowledge back to your company that could make good business cases for the changes that you want to implement. So the community is amazing in observability.
And then I think that's probably linking into my second question here, which is there any resource, thought leader, blog, book, podcast, maybe a specific conference that you would recommend for someone within this space?
So I would say everything that is cloud native, I go for it. It's such good conferences. These are mostly conferences to go to and to meet different professionals that are doing the same thing that you're doing and sharing experiences with them. There are some observability newsletters that are coming out every week. You get the best of everything there, what is new, what has changed from the product. And if I would recommend one thought leader. I love following Adriana Vilela. She is one of the most known figures in observability right now. And every time that I need some inspiration from the community, I go to her blog post or to her LinkedIn. But generally, cloud native space is where you should go. KubeCon is an amazing resource. Sometimes some people cannot go because it's a bit pricey, but there are also scholarships. Companies are also paying for tickets for people to go because the learning there and the connections are just so worth it.
Thank you. Really good, great examples there to share. Thank you. Final question. To you, scalability is?
To me, scalability is, I have a lot of things in my mind right now. It's one of the core principles in software engineering, I would say.
Iris,
I think
thank
we
you.
agree.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, we do. We very much agree. Thank you so much for taking the time and for joining us here.
Thank you for the invitation. It was great being here.
And that's it for this episode of the Smooth Scaling podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing and perhaps share it with a friend or colleague. If you want to share any thoughts or comments with us, send them to smoothscaling@qit.com. This podcast is researched by Joseph Thwaites, produced by Perseo Mandilo, and brought to you by Qit, your virtual waiting room partner. I'm your host, José Quaresma. Until next time, keep it smooth, keep it scalable.